All right, ladies and gentlemen. So at this point, what we should have is we should have like the face with the basic structure built up. When we looked at it from the side, what we wanted to see is that the forehead, and in most of the cases, the cheeks pop out a little bit further than the eyes. Now, some people have more cheeks, some people have less, but you can see the brow comes out. We've got a little bit of a hint of a nose. We've got really the rest of the face going down towards the mouth and chin. This is all covered up. It's relatively symmetrical. You can see in and around the eyes, it's a little messy, but the important part is that the center parts of the eyes are still clean and good looking. We're going to be working with flesh tone clay for this one, but you have the choice of what color you're going to use. We have obviously some tans and a couple different browns up there. To start with eyelids, the one thing I will tell you, and this thing I'll repeat again from when we practiced, was it is way easier to try to do both of them at the same time. If you try to do them one at a time and make one match the other, I'm going to tell you it's hard for me to do. If it's hard for me to do, I'm going to tell you it's going to be pretty hard for you to do. When we did this the first original time, we rolled out a little piece of clay like what I just did right now, but we rolled it out to be like the thickness of your pinky. We're obviously working much smaller now, so this thing should be much thinner than a regular pencil. A number 2 pencil and everything else like that. If you want to compare, I wouldn't say it's half as thick, but it is thinner, closer to half than it is for the whole pencil. When you make a little roll like this, try to keep it even, and one thing I'll recommend for you is take it and actually cut it in half. Try to get yourself 2 equal pieces. If you're starting off with equal amounts of clay, you've got more of a chance of keeping things relatively symmetrical. I'm going to use the white plastic tool to roll things out. So I'm going to roll this out. Now we are working smaller than what we practiced originally. That means everything is going to be a little thinner and smaller. But when I tell you to don't make this too thin, I would tell you try to think at least as thick as a dime, if not a little bit thicker. Okay? We don't have to make the eyelids super thin. Your eyelids in real life are actually a little bit thicker than you think, but think about like the thickness of a dime is pretty good. Probably a nickel would be a little bit too much, so don't make it paper thin. All right? They generally don't hold their form that well. And when we start building them, the first thing we're going to build is we're going to build the lower lids. So when we're making the lower lids, one thing I want you to keep in mind is I want you to take your clay, decide whichever edge looks like the cleaner, nicer edge, that's going to be the part that touches the eye. We want to kind of bend it a little bit around our finger. The lower lid does not need to curve a whole lot, but you see how I've curved it ever so slightly? And we're going to take the back end of it and just sort of pinch it back. So you can see it's almost like a little wave. We kind of see like it dips down and comes back up a little bit. That come back up part is going to be the part that we're going to line up towards the actual tear duct. Now we want to cover part of that tear duct up. We also want to kind of position this so it doesn't completely cover that blue part of the eye. It almost just basically like hangs there a little bit. Maybe it cuts off just a little bit of the bottom. When we do the top lid, we're going to cover up more of the top lid than the bottom lid. What we want to do is kind of just catch this towards the bottom edge of the color part of the eye. We want to make sure it sort of dips a little bit, and a little bit of that tear duct is covered up. One of the things you can do is, I'll tell you, is don't press it into the face until you've put both of them down, and you can really take a look at the symmetry. All right, so don't start like attaching one completely until we make the other one. Again, with the other one, I'm making that little dip. I'm sort of bending it a little bit around my finger so it has a little bit of a dip in it. I'm sort of curving that front edge back up. That part that curves back up is going to be towards that tear duct. Okay? We want to sort of have it hug the bottom of the color part of the eye. Okay? What we want to do is we want to take a look at it. I'm just going to take a look at it, pointing it directly at me to make sure it looks fairly symmetrical. Now, maybe not everybody's going to be perfectly symmetrical, but we want to try to get it as best as we can. Now, the parts that are touching the actual eye, we don't want to mess with them that much. It is not easy to come back in and make it look clean with this tool later on. It's actually really, really hard. So what I would recommend is literally leave that stuff alone. What I would do is on the bottom edge, out here that touches the cheek, I would blend a little bit of that in just to start. I would blend a little bit of the middle part into that bridge of the nose, and I would blend a little bit on the bottom here. You want to make sure that you don't pull your lids down too much because you'll start peeling them back from the eye. We've got our symmetry over here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my little round tip tool, the one with the rubber tip that's a little bit like a pencil point. All I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get into the inside part of this eye. I'm not pressing down super duper hard. I want to kind of just press it in just a little bit on the inside part, okay? Just so it sinks in a little bit more in there, right where the bridge of the nose is going to be. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. Again, I'm not making a giant impression. I'm just kind of gently pressing that in. That way, that little bit that's in the middle that's sort of part of the nose now sticks out just a little bit more, and the part over there near the tear duct sinks in a little bit more. I'm just doing that on the inside part. You can see a little bit of that impression that I've made right there. Could you get that for me? Next, I'm going to set up for the top lids. For the top lids, we're going to start off basically the same way. We're going to take our clay, wedge it up a little bit, roll it out, and again, we want to work with approximately something that's a bit thinner than a regular number 2 pencil. Not quite half of a number 2 pencil, but significantly thinner. Roll that out. We want to try to make 2 pieces, okay? Again, 2 pieces, cut it in half. I have way extra clay than I need right over here, so it's not a big deal that I have extra, but again, if I work with relatively similar amounts to start with, it makes it easier. Roll those 2 out. Again, thickness of a dime, thinner than a nickel, okay? Try to keep them relatively similar. Use the white tool for that. If your eyelids don't look good when you peel them off the table and you're trying to set them up to put them down, hey, just smush them back up into a ball and remake them. That's all that you have to do. I would tell you I'd rather you remake them 3 or 4 times than simply have to peel them off later on. For the upper lid, and you all should be paying attention now. You don't have to sculpt with me. You could just watch. For the upper lid, you're going to bend this around your finger a little bit. You want to get a little bit more of an arch on the upper lid, okay? So the upper lid has a little bit more of an arch than the lower lid does. We're going to take that, I'm going to go ahead and try to take a look and just rough fit it a little bit. One of the things I want to see is, I want to see that I still see a little bit of that tear duct, that I don't completely cover that up. And I do want to see that it kind of covers a little bit of the top part of the eye. All right, it can go all the way down to maybe the black part of the eye. If you look in the real picture over there, you can see the upper lid covers a little bit more of the eye than the lower lid, okay? I'll reposition this thing. If I don't like the shape of it, I'm going to go ahead and kind of reshape it off of the actual thing. I tell you, the more work you can do before you actually attach it on to make sure it looks good in the way you want, the better. Okay, I'm going to go ahead right now. I have a little extra material that's crossing over the middle here. I'm just going to take my tool and get rid of some of that right now. And I'm going to work on setting up the second eyelid. Again, try to do these things at the same time. Again, for the upper eyelids, I want to make sure that they're a little bit more curved, okay, than I did my original lower lids. So they have a little bit more of an arch. Again, try to position this so a little bit of the top color part of the eye gets covered up, and then a bit of the tear duct still shows up, okay? When you have it, it looks relatively symmetrical like this. Again, I'm going to get rid of just a little bit of this extra material that's in the center. I don't need it right now. The extra on the outside is really not that big a deal. So I'm going to carefully start kind of pressing that in a little bit. I'm going to blend it onto the outside just so it's holding on. I want to do this a little methodically and take my time before I really just kind of smush it all in there. One of the things I'll tell you again is the part that actually touches the eye is a part you should avoid touching at all costs. If you screw that part up, I would just redo them. What I'm going to tell you is take the rubber tip tool and use the rubber tip just very carefully to get in that hard to reach area to try to blend the top lid into the bottom lid, okay? If that corner of the eye gets a little bit lost in there, take your round tool, guys, please stop talking while I'm doing this. Take your round tool and sort of reshape it. Take that rubber tip tool on the inside part of your eye, the part that's inside close to your nose. You can get in there with the tool a little bit and just press that down in so it sinks in a little bit more than the outer edge. You don't have to do that all the way around. You could do it a little bit on the outside as well too. Press that all in. I'm going to ask again, can you guys please stop talking while I'm doing this? I give you permission to talk all you want when we're done. It's a little annoying to me. Again, on the opposite side, use the rubber tip tool. Get in there and blend the two lids together. If you start losing that little tear duct, appreciate it. I really would. I'm just going to throw you out in a minute if you can't stop talking. Take the rubber tip tool, put it on the inside part of the eye, press that little bit in. Try not to touch the rest of it. You can blend that outside edge in. You can have a little bit of that crease left over. You don't have to completely blend that out. This upper part that touches the brow at this point, you can blend that in. I would be careful on how hard you're pressing so you don't accidentally like open up the eye. We've got to do one more layer of clay now to do that sort of extra ridge. If you look at the picture over here, most of us are going to have at least a little bit of a crease where our upper eyelids sort of dip in. Now, everybody's picture is going to be a little bit different, so we want to keep that in mind. For that upper part, we want to use a little thicker piece of clay. We'll roll that out a little bit larger than we did that original piece for the eyelids themselves. This is going to be part of the brow, okay? I'm going to take that piece, instead of rolling it out with my white tool, I'm going to start pinching it, okay, and flatten it a little bit, okay? Not a lot, but enough that it's a little bit wider than it is thick, and that it still keeps that roundness. I'm going to go ahead and let me chop this in half so I have, again, two equal pieces. I'm going to look to take this bottom edge. I almost want to shape it again like another lid. For him, his lids kind of come up a little bit like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kind of take this thing. I'm going to take the outside ends of it and sort of thin them out a little bit. Sculpt them into another lid that sort of sits on top of their eye just like that. You're going to see this second part that I'm making over here is a little bit thicker. Okay, for him, it sort of comes up a little bit higher on the inside, so I'll reposition it. I'm just going to place this one here and then work on the other one before I completely stick them down. Again, I recommend that you try to make both of them at the same time and place them at the same time, because it's a lot easier to figure out if they look the same both ways and if they are symmetrical. Okay, I feel decent about what I have over here. I'm going to work from the outside. I'm just going to press a little bit of that in on this side. At this point, they look like really heavy sort of, you know, eyebrows. I want to keep that crease on the inside part of it. I don't want to mess that up too much. But again, I'm going to take my little tool over here, and on the inside part over here, I'm going to kind of just press that in and work that into the corner of the eye. All right. I'm not going to do that all the way around. I'm just doing that on the inside part over here. I'm going to blend the top of this out. If I have to, I can actually use the tool to do that. We're going to build a little bit more brow over this eye anyway. But what we're looking to try to do right now is get that little bit of a crease that the lid has. You can kind of push it around a little bit and reshape it and kind of set it up. And do the same thing on the inside part over here. Again, use your tool to kind of blend the inside part in. Try to make sure that this other crease part inside doesn't get ruined or sort of lost in the sort of sculpture. And then do your best to kind of blend the top part of this in. Okay? That'll give you your eyes, eyelids with creases for the upper eyelids. This will be the start of your face. Now, this is a finished part of your face. If you were doing this in a different skin color, obviously you would have used different clay. So yours might look like, I guess, the Robin's mask in Batman, just a ring of different color around here, but your entire thing's going to get covered with that color. For this one, this is it. This particular part over here is going to remain as a finished part of my sculpture. I want to make sure that I don't ruin this. So when you are packing them up at the end of the day and you are putting them in your little boxes, don't throw other clay on top of it. Don't put other little tools and stuff like that on top of it. Try to keep the integrity of those edges and everything nice and clean and crisp, because otherwise, you know, you're going to be ruining all your hard work. All right, and at this point, we are starting to get some of our finished pieces. This will be a lot to get done today. I don't suspect a lot of you will get that much done. It takes a little bit of time. All right, but once you're set up with that, we'll talk tomorrow and the next day about adding to this, starting to build the nose up, build the cheeks, and build more eyebrows. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is adding the eyes.